welcome back to the channel. And as you saw in the clickbait, we're gonna tear out an engine out of the MK3 and hopefully try the new engine and reveal what engine we're gonna have in this car. And the sad MK3 and the status that it is now. So the first I'm gonna do, take off the grille, take off the headlights, front bumper, and of course we're gonna tear down everything in the engine bay, and yeah, everything has to come out. So we're gonna tear out the old engine, try to sell it, and then move over to the new engine. What lunatic we're gonna find out that I am to put in into the MK3. Matthias is just laughing his ass off in the background. But welcome to today's video, and we're gonna have some fun tearing some engines out and in of an MK3.
So now the fun part starts, and sorry guys, I'm really sick in trying to edit this for you, but we're starting off dismantling the whole front section to be able to put in the new secret weapon. Next step is emptying out the cooling fluid, and we're gonna take off all the cable harness from the engine and the miscellaneous stuff around it. And next step is releasing the bolts from the exhaust system that Matthias is doing right now. And now the front core support is coming off, and we can reach the engine much easier. Matthias is now moving over to releasing all the hose clamps and everything that's holding the hoses onto the car. And yeah, I'm having a party behind his back. And finally, after a couple of hours of work, we can pull out the whole subframe with the engine on it. That's gonna make our life so much easier, prepping the engine bay for the next trip. Yeah, so the engine is out, and if anyone's interested in a healthy engine, just shoot me a DM. But it hurts a little bit in the heart seeing the engine placed on the floor, but it gives room for much more fun for the future.
And we are out with the engine, and look at this, a lot of room for activity. It's a lot of space, but the engine we're thinking about needs the depth of the car. So I think the firewall is gonna call it a day and disappear, because we're gonna have a big ass gearbox there. And I guess, Matthias, should we reveal what we're doing for an engine?
When it's in the car.
Okay. He wants to hold you on it, so I want to show it, but he's the bad one. Okay, but yeah, engine all out, and the plan is that we're planning to take off the engine from the subframe that we have over here and see if we can utilize the old subframe with the old steering rack, or I have a plan B, and that's we have a BMW E36 subframe with like a complete one. So let's see if we can utilize the OEM subframe or if we're gonna have to go on the plan B. But I think, Matthias, first of all, lift in the engine into the engine bay,
yep,
and then try with the subframe from the MK3, and then we're gonna let you in the rest. I got myself into a little bit of a trouble, but I like trouble, so we're gonna head over to what I bought. I have bought a T5, a Volvo T5 engine, a complete one. No, I'm not going to use everything on here, but I'm going to use the engine. So it's a B5234-T engine. Why I wanted this engine is because it's an 81mm bore. What that means is that we have a better foundation than the block. There's a lot of engines for the Volvo. It's 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, and the stages are 81mm bore, and then you go up to the 83mm bore, and then you have less material. And usually these engines crack in the blocks. I'm gonna show you later on in a video when I take the engine apart. Please comment in the comment section below if you think this is a good idea, if I'm crazy, if I'm stupid. What do you think, guys?
My next step is now taking off all the unnecessary stuff to be able to see the condition of this engine. But I think we're gonna go through it step by step.
Taking away the cable harness, so I think that's done. So I have the original boxes, or the PCMs and the PCM and the ECM. So this is the power unit for this engine. But I think we're gonna go aftermarket. Hopefully we're gonna go like Link ECU or yeah, something like that, because usually that works better. We're gonna tune this car. We're gonna tune this engine. I think I need an aftermarket. So I just wanted to look in the ports of this, or where the coil location is, and so number 4 usually gets pretty hot, and as we can see, the discoloration in here, it's a little bit more yellow than the 5th, but that's strange. Usually, no, I'm sorry, this is number 1. Usually number 4 is getting hot because the water pumps in from the water pump that is on this side, and these 2 cylinders usually go very hot. It looks like number 2 got hot, so it's going to be interesting opening this up. But otherwise it's clean, no oil in there, so that's really nice. I don't want to open this up because usually it looks like crap, and this one does. So this is an engine that's been, I think it's gone 20,000 miles. So not American miles, I'm gonna put it down here why it's an American miles, but in Sweden or in Europe we call it miles or kilometers, so 200,000 kilometers. But these engines, you can get really lucky finding a really good example. I'm opened up these engines way over 300,000 kilometers, and they look really nice on the inside. It always depends on the oil and if it's been taken care of. I'm not going to talk too much again, but the next stage here I think is taking off the automatic gearbox, and we're going to take that off. Then we're going to actually lift the engine up with the engine hoist. You're going to see me do a lot on this engine. We're going to of course check it over before we take it apart. I want to know how healthy it is. We're going to take off the oil sump, and we're going to look on the rods and everything. And of course we're going to take it apart in 1,000 pieces because I want to reinforce it. We're going to change piston rods, we're gonna, all the bearings, all the gaskets, everything new. So I know that this engine is good for the 500-600 horsepower, of course. Please, in the comment section below, I know I'm asking you, but I really don't know what you want to see in the movies or the videos. So put it in the comment section below if you want to see in detail how I take this engine apart and build it together, like the torque and why I'm putting the gasket that I'm putting on it. And of course we're going to build our own exhaust side for the turbo, because that's going to be a little bit tricky, how much space we got in there. It's the same with the inlet. We're going to build our own plenum intake manifold. We're going to have new Westgate. We're going to have, yeah. I hope you're going to like the content of this build, and let me stop talking yet again, take off the heavy automatic gearbox, and then lift this engine off the subframe so we can do some magic.
And it was a heavy workout getting the engine off the subframe and the automatic gearbox, but now me and Matthias has the engine bare boned. We're rolling it in for the first time in the engine bay of the MK3, and now the hard part starts, finding out how much we need to cut and how much we need to fabricate to get this custom engine into the MK3.
So guys, as you saw, engine is hanging in the engine hoist, and we had it in the engine compartment, just figuring out how this is gonna fit. So I have a couple of things to do now. I have to take away the ABS system. That's gonna collide with the plenum intake manifold that we're gonna build. So we're gonna take away the ABS in the first hand, and then keep the brake booster, because I want to just see if I can save it and keep it. We're gonna take this away, and I'm gonna have to cut this much away from the old subframe. First of all, the gearbox is gonna be way back in, tucked here, but then I have the oil sump on the engine, and so this is the old one. And on the Volvo T5 engines, when you place them straight in a car, you have to change the oil sump. So I got one from Volvo 960. That's very common in Sweden. You take one from a 960 engine, so a V6, you shorten that, and then you have much space to be able to put something through here. And that's where the E36 front chassis is going to be mounted. Hopefully, we're going to see. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take the converter off, and the flywheel, and then the old intake manifold, because we want to see where the engine's going to line up. And it's very important now. I'm going to try to get the engine as far back as possible, because in the MK3, the spring towers are very, very close to the window and the firewall. In a lot of other cars, they are centered in the chassis, but in this, I guess, they're way back. And we're going to see if we can use them, utilize the suspension towers or not. Otherwise, me and Matthias, we're going to have to build some custom tube towers. That's not a problem, but I'm going to try to use as much as I can. We're going to try to save some time before Elmia. So I'm going to start cutting in the car, taking off the ABS system, and I think I'm going to be forced to take off the whole brake booster. And to be able to do that, I have to remove the full interior, and that's a pain in the you know what. Yeah, next step. I jumped way further in the process, but I have the engine hanging in the car and approximately where I want to have it. I'm trying to find out where to position the power steering, how much more I can cut into the lower control arms, or if I have to. A lot of stuff is happening here. I've taken off the brake booster here, and I'm trying to align the steering rack with the power steering rack down there, and I'm trying to find out where the engine's going to be positioned, like height wise. I don't want it to be too low, so it's way under the lower control arms. It's a lot to take in, and I think the next step is to take out the interior like completely, because I'm gonna have to cut away a lot of metal in the firewall behind the engine to fit the gearbox. And before I can do that, I need to cut it out, position the engine again to see where the engine mount should be, and I guess where I can start build my tubes from one side to the other one, and where I can fabricate the engine mounts. But then of course we're gonna add a lot of support on the gearbox underneath. So I think I'm gonna build like a cradle that holds the engine, but also a cradle to make the subframe and everything stable on the front side. And yeah, I'm talking a lot, but I think the next step is to go into the car and take out this beautiful interior. as you saw on the time lapse, it was a lot of bolts, a lot of brackets and everything. So first of all the buttons and the cabling and the management and the cluster and everything, you saw that in the time lapse. And then this effing thing took me like forever. It had like super sturdy bolts, I get it. It's like the main frame for the dashboard, but this is what the bolts were holding this together. But finally this is out, and now the next stage is, I guess, to empty out all the airbox that is mounted towards the firewall, so we can start cutting. I said it before, but here you can see my worries. So you have the gas pedal there, and then the already existing wall or the tunnel is very super close to the gas pedal. So I think that's gonna be a big issue. Yeah, a little bit scary. Maybe we have to push the gas pedal a little bit to the left. As you know, you can, as most of you know, you can buy aftermarket pedals. So I can bolt them down to the chassis, but I'm pretty tall, so that's going to be a big issue because I don't want to move them too far back, because then I have to sit very, very far back with the chair and with the roll cage that's going to be in the back here with the cross and everything. It's a lot to figure out, but one step at a time. So I'm gonna take away the HVAC system, and I'm not gonna bore you with that. So we're gonna jump way ahead when we can start cutting and looking at what the firewall looks like and the tunnel. So let's go. Cutting out a big chunk of the tunnel. I'm starting really small, so I'm not cutting out too much. But as I said before, I was really scared about the gas pedal, and you can see the hole is exactly where the gas pedal is. But I think I can move it a couple of inches to the left side, and we're gonna go for an aftermarket pedal. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. And the next stage is to mount the gearbox onto the engine, and I think we're going to use the YouTube magic. So in 3, 2, 1, and the gearbox is on. So what I'm going to do now 100 times is in with the engine, out with the engine, in with the engine, and I'm going to be able now to see where I'm gonna have to be cutting away the metal from the inside of the cabin. So I'm gonna do that. I'm not gonna bore you with a bunch of talking, so I guess we do the YouTube trick again. 3, 2, 1. So engine and gearbox is approximately where we want to have it. I think we're happy with the position where the engine is and where the gearbox is. I'm gonna show you the gearbox a little bit later, how the positioning is there. So what we're thinking about is engine mounts, and we are thinking about having one engine mount on the right side and one on the left side, and then the rest of the engine mounts, or so to call the gearbox mount, in the back. We're also thinking about the flexibility and serviceability, so we're gonna try to make the tunnel big enough so I can get off the gearbox whenever I want to change the clutch. Because I have a really heavy left foot. I have a bad habit of actually letting the clutch go like 100%. So I'm tearing down the clutch. Unfortunately, I'm gonna try to better myself. Yes. But now we're thinking about the engine mounts, and we took the OEM bar, the front crash bar or whatever you call it, and we cut it up here, and we just realized that it's better to just use the mounts that are in the crash frames, and then weld some beams, so from here to the back on each side, and then connect them together and make the engine mounts. And I think Matthias is happily are gonna do the engine mounts.
Yeah.
As you can see, yes, my cutouts are not that perfect, but that's going to be better when I do the tunnel itself. But as I said, we're really close to the firewall with the gearbox, and if I want it to be serviceability on the gearbox and change it, we need to come around about here so we can slide back the gearbox and then take it down. We have a long axle from the gearbox that goes into the crankshaft, so that's why we need to come back quite far when we take off the gearbox. And then I hope to be able to utilize the OEM shifter box, so we're just going to connect it with the arm that's already on the gearbox. That's going to be a later topic, because now you can also see that the gas pedal is in the way for the tunnel for the gearbox, so we're going to have to change that out. But the plan was always to change out the pedal position and the positioning of the pedals. For me, I like them when they're quite narrow. But up next, we're going to do a lot of cutting and using the bracing to do the mounts. But Matthias has been really good. He's been fabricating some custom tubes for me. And this is to be able to mount the spindles to the MK3 lower control arms. So we're going to push this into this cylinder. It's going to be welded on to a bracket that we can perfectly mount to the OEM MK3 lower control arms. So this is super. And the next thing, we have some goodies coming in the post. So this is the camber plates that we're going to use. This is for an OEM Sirocco, but you can change them out on the E36 coilovers, because the center hole on the strut towers are the same as on the Sirocco. So this is going to be perfectly fine, and I think we're going to position it like this with the bolt pattern and everything. And then the next perfect thing is that we can mount a good strut bar brace all over, because now we have space enough on the top side.
Now we're starting to cut into the old subframe of the MK3 and preparing for the new mount and the cradle. So we're cutting it off to be able to weld in the 4x4s. And the next step for me is cutting away the excess material on the strut towers to be able to mount the new camber adjusted plates that we bought from Sirocco. So we're lining out and marking where we should drill the new holes to fit the camber adjusted plates. So I'm gonna drill up 2 holes here and make some space in the middle. And then I think it's time to jump over to the front suspension.
I'm using different parts right now. It's just in the build phase, because I'm of course gonna buy new coilovers. These I just found on the Facebook Marketplace together with the lower control arms and everything. But I took the strut top from my KV springs or coilovers that I had before on the Golf 3, and then that's gonna slide on to the top plate like so. I don't know if you can see, but it slides into the socket of the chamber, and then I'm gonna finish off with a locking bolt, and then we can mount this puppy on the car and see how good or how off we are when it comes to centerizing the coilovers and the brake disc and hub and everything towards where I want to have it on the car. I think this is going to be super good when it's done, and the only thing I need to do later on is to order E36 coilovers in the front. But let's put this together onto the car and then make and fabricate the custom spindles in the lower control arms, and then the whole front suspension is done. Went pretty fast, and Matthias is just nodding and sitting there. He's waiting on me to work, so sorry guys.
If you're gonna explain why you chose Sirocco.
Why I chose Sirocco? So Matthias, now I don't know if you know, heard him, could hear him. Why I chose the Sirocco is that Matthias, he ordered them for his car, and if you haven't seen his project, that car is almost already done. But what we chose was the camber plates for the Sirocco, and this car, we're building it simultaneously, but you guys haven't seen the videos until now because we didn't want to drop too much content at the same time. But Matthias had them and I just wanted to try them out, and they look good. And they were quite good price. And the function of it suits the suspension. And
the strut towers are pretty similar.
The strut towers are pretty similar. We can move over. I guess if you haven't seen the Sirocco build, I'm gonna put a link up here. But here you have the Sirocco and the strut towers, and they are quite similar when it comes to the top side on the strut tower, as you can see here. I only had to add these two bolt holes and this diameter. That's why I cut this up, because they fit perfectly.
You can show them why the OEM.
Yeah, I was really surprised.
That's one pretty much worse.
I was really surprised of this, but if you look, they have pushed in they pushed in a reinforcement hub and pushed them together. And as you can see here, they're so off. You can see how much glue it's on this side, and it's almost nothing on this side, and it's nothing close to the other side. So then they're not symmetrical. So I don't know. This is OEM minus, I would call it. But yeah, that's why I chose the Sirocco top heads. So the camber plates, just an easy install. I didn't have to fabricate the towers. I just drill some holes, open up the holes.
Yeah, because you were thinking E36 from the start.
I wanted to have the E36 from the beginning, because I thought then I can just buy the complete coilover. So why make it harder to yourself? And then the Sirocco fitted it perfectly. Yeah, long explanation, but I guess that's sometimes what you need to know why I went the way I went. But Matthias, should we just pop on the things and then fabricate the spindles?
Yep.
So we could actually bolt on, put some wheels on, and see how off or how perfect we're on point.
Next step is manufacturing our custom lower control arm brackets and attachment, and what we're doing here is welding on the MK3 bracket to a cylindrical tube, and then we can take the E36 spindle and push it into the cylinder, and hopefully all the measurements and the welds are correct. Let's see.
Guys, the suspension is together and top mounted camber brackets are on. The modifications with the coilovers, you saw me mount that, and we pressed in the spindle into our own fabrication, and it's bolted on to the OEM lower control arm, and the hub from the E36 is on. This is now complete, and I can't wait until we can put on the wheels on it and put it onto the ground. I guess we have a lot more to do. We have the engine is gonna go in, we have to do the engine mounts. I guess the crankshaft tunnel, I can do that later, but we're jigging up the subframe, the custom subframe that we're gonna use, or the cradle for the engine right now. We're just focused on getting this really level with the car and with the drive shaft and with the diff that's in the back. And yes, I have a secret wheel on there. We're gonna do a wheel reveal soon, but I want to focus on getting the engine in and the weight on the car until we put on the new wheels and do the wheel reveal for you guys. I can't wait until I can show them for you. But I think me and Matthias, we're gonna go further with looking for what bushings we're gonna use. I think Matthias
I already have a plan.
So Matthias already has a plan, and he wants to do our own bushings.
Yep.
Matthias has in his workshop the plastic that we need to do the bushings. We're gonna do our own brackets that we're gonna fabricate, and we're gonna utilize, I think, these three bolt holes.
Yep.
And then we're gonna add a bushing and then the bracket that goes down. Nothing really hard, it's just determining what's the best fit on the block, and I guess that's the same thing on this side. we have 3 really nice bolt holes here. We have one there, there, and there. We're gonna utilize that and then go down to the cradle.
So I'm starting to mock up and take some measurements and starting to cut up my material to finish off the front cradle of the engine support. We're gonna do the cradle as simple as possible to be able to mount the engine bushings and making the cradle accessible for service.
Jumping way ahead in the future, yet again in the project, we did the front subframe.
Yep.
So it's fully welded, as you saw in the time lapse when I was welding together everything, as you can see here. Now we came to the tricky part, centering the engine. The engine has to align with the back subframe and the diff, because we want it straight with the differential to meet up with the gearbox on the engine. But it's not only that you have to focus on, it's the rotation of the engine and also the tilt of the engine. So we have spent like 3 hours, 4 hours,
Yeah, minimum.
with a laser and with some measuring tools, with a gradient
And zip ties.
and zip ties, hillbilly, you know, to get this engine straight as possible. So Matthias has been quite hard at work.
Yep.
You did some CAD designs on the engine mounts, and a good friend of mine, Christian, he has a fabrication company, and he has a laser, so he laser cut plates for us on a day delivery. That's really awesome. So
Have we shown them what bushes we're gonna use?
no, but first of all, you're gonna have a clip here when Christian is cutting out with his laser, and then we can show the plates that we got and the bushings. As I have said in the beginning of this project, I said that it would be a budget build. Okay, he's laughing his ass off. But we're taking some stuff that we have in our secret treasures, and Matthias found some bushings for his Sierra, right?
Yep.
So this are
Trailing arm bushings.
trailing arms bushings, and it's quite easy. You push them in together, and then you have the socket that pushes in the bushings. And now we got the nice laser cut plates from Christian. That's the same guy who made the welding table for us. So it's a laser and it's laser and skärteknik. For those who are in Sweden, he has really good prices and good service. So when we're taking this together or mounting this together, it's gonna look a little bit like this. You have the socket, you have the plates, and then you have to think about the bushings going into the socket, and these two we're gonna weld to the subframe, and it's gonna look a little bit like on the left side we have already prepared. So Matthias has been hard at work, and as you can see, we have a really sturdy ass plate that we mounted to the engine. And then we have, that's our prototype from yesterday or from tonight that we had to just CAD up. So the backplate here and this one's gonna go together with the bushing in between. And this is gonna be welded to the subframe. And the hard part underneath the car was aligning the differential with the gearbox, and we used a laser. And I don't know if you're gonna be able to see anything under here, but Matthias maybe can help me out. We had a laser put down underneath the subframe, and you can see the differential up here, and then that's pointing. The laser is pointing towards the gearbox, and we want those two to align as perfect as possible. You can see the laser pointing at the drive shaft and then pointing at the gearbox end on the other side of the engine. As we said 100 times before, we make a lot of stuff behind the scenes, but in the end, we want to show you the whole process, but we can't really film everything. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna double check again that the engine is centered, not tilted, and that it's straight in rotation, and then we can start point welding or spot welding the brackets. And I would say, Matthias, the hardest or the most crucial point now is to weld the socket for the bushing in a completely dead zero angle.
Yeah. Because it can't twist when it's hot, when it gets hot.
Exactly. So when you weld, it gets hot and it can't really twist.
Or
Warp, as you call it in the welding industry. So, Matthias,
my lovely welding table.
yeah, our lovely welding table. We have the full complete socket and the plate bolted into the welding table, and we know for sure that the welding table is straight. In line, we can just hit the welder and make some dimes, and then hopefully we can let this crane off or the hoist from the engine. And I can't wait, because I'm really worried that we are gonna have a big problem with the sump and a bigger problem with the steering rack.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot space underneath, and I don't want to crash that the first bump I'm gonna hit on the road. But we're not gonna bore you with that, so we're gonna jump straight to the welding, and then maybe welding on the car and mounting everything together. Oh, I'm looking forward to this, guys. Don't judge, I'm in the sanding booth whilst Matthias is working hard with the engine, and he's actually done. So the engine is in the car, it sits alone, and we can finally get the hoist away and start planning the biggest problem, the biggest fear that I had all the time, and that's the oil sump and steering column. No, not steering column, the steering rack. But we can finally take the hoist out and see how it looks. So I think the video is getting quite long. For you guys who are still in the video, huge thank you for the support, and I think we're in a really good progress. Me and Matthias, we're gonna jump ahead to the next stage next time. Next steps are intake manifold. We're gonna have an exhaust, we're gonna have intercooler, we're gonna add fuel, we're gonna add the steering rack problem that we're trying to fix. Everything that we need to have to get this engine started. But of course we're gonna rebuild this engine before we start it up. And for the next video we have something really fun to show you, and that's a huge upgrade. Maybe we can see this puppy on the floor, and then you have to guess what it is. But thank you for watching, and as I always say, have a good morning, good evening, and good night wherever you are. Bye bye, hej då!